Welcome to My Time to Fly, the channel focused on real-world general aviation. On the docket today, we'll be discussing the cost of potential avionics upgrades in my 1963 Mooney M20C. Although it's a specific application, I do believe these costs will be quite similar, regardless of airplane make and model. In the last video, I introduced our increasing need to pursue instrument panel upgrades. These upgrades are being brought on by our desire to pursue IFR flying and an ongoing problem with magnetism in our airframe. This renders our compass, we'll say, less than accurate. While the problem hasn't impacted our VFR flying, we know it's not possible to fly IFR without an accurate compass. Now, after spending many hours attempting to remove or reduce the magnetism in our Mooney, we're forced to consider changes that will allow for a remote compass source, better known as a magnetometer. Because the magnetometer can be located anywhere in the airplane, we should be able to find a place away from ferrous metal that retains or electronics that create the magnetism. But of course, it doesn't stop there. You still need a device to receive the magnetometer's output and turn that output into usable information. And of course, if you're going to tear into your airplane to do a little bit of avionics work, you should probably consider doing enough to keep you happy for the foreseeable future. Of course, in the future, we would love the opportunity to incorporate an updated transponder with an ADS-B in-out source. We have one, it's just a tail beacon, along with an engine monitor, an autopilot, well, and a WAAS GPS. So with all that said, I started the conversation with our local avionics shop. We chatted about many options, and he was kind enough to provide some directionally accurate quotes to help us make a decision. To be clear, the costs that I'll talk about include hardware and estimated labor. And honestly, after seeing the prices, I sure hope I can find a way to save some costs. I also understand there are more options out there, so please tell me down in the comments what you would pick, what you would stay away from, or simply challenge my options with some of your own. To be clear, these first set of costs are just to install primary flight instruments without adding any further capability. After I talk about these initial costs, I'll circle back to talk about the projected total cost if we were to completely overhaul our panel, putting in everything we would ever want. Just to be honest, it might be a bit shocking. Okay, so for our initial flight instrument upgrades, we would consider the following options. Number one, a single GARMIN G3X. GARMIN, of course, is one of the premier avionics suppliers in the industry, and the G3X is a great platform to be able to build off of. It provides a glass cockpit feel, not individual gauges, and kind of one consolidated package. It has some further add-ons down the line that make upgrades like into the GFC 500 autopilot or into the G3X engine monitor more affordable than if you were doing those standalone. The cost for that garment is $16,690. Next on the list is the single DYNON Skyview HDX. That's one 10-inch display in front of the pilot. Again, that display is multifunction. It has the ability to integrate things like an engine monitor and a comm and a transponder directly to it to be able to navigate from a single display. That's all further capability. We wouldn't get that right out of the gate, but just to use it as our primary flight display, be $15,801. Next on the list is two GI 275s. Again, these are very similar to G5s, except they are hole mounted. So where G5s aren't typically flush mounted, these GI 275s are flush mounted in the existing hole of a instrument panel and would potentially look a little cleaner. Two GI 275s come in right around $13,300. Next on the list is the ASPEN E5. I didn't dig too far into the Aspen, except I know that many people have told me that they are nice. It's essentially a vertically oriented display, similar to having something like two G5s. But I think it also adds in capability like synthetic vision and other capabilities that maybe the G5 doesn't have. So for a single Aspen E5, you're looking at $11,390. And then finally on the list, dual G5s. G5s are kind of the old standby, right? When people start going away from steam gauges, G5s are one of the first things they put in. They're economical, and a dual G5 setup comes in right around $11,300. So I listed these costs from highest to lowest. Of course, my general inclination is to go to the least expensive option, especially because it's a tried and true system from Garmin. But there's a bit more to think about. How do further upgrades impact the long term costs? Well, I'll tell you this, I stacked up the options again, and it might be a little surprising. So, a single Garmin G3X with an autopilot GFC 500, a GTN 650 GPS, a transponder, a Stratus transponder, and the G3X engine monitor comes to a total of about $70,000 long term. If I were to do dual GI 275s, which again are the whole mounted multifunction displays from Garmin, and essentially that same stack of inputs as the G3X, except swap out a JPI engine monitor because there's no great cost savings, there's no integrated solution. Now you're down to about 68,000. So it was 70 to 68,000. An Aspen E5, which I talked about earlier, was about 11.3 for the unit base. Again, with the GFC 500 autopilot, GTN 650, the same Stratus transponder, and a JPI engine monitor. Now you're looking more like 66,000, still kind of right, hovering right in that same 70, 68, 66. Dual G5s, again, it's going to have the same package behind it as essentially the Aspen or the GI 275s. So there's no built-in cost savings, we'll say. That too is going to come in about $66,000, the same as the Aspen. Last on the list is the DYNON Skyview HDX, which was about 15 grand before. They have what they call a well-equipped package, which costs right around $19,000, which includes a transponder, engine monitor package, comm radio, and some savings in labor because you get to put that all together at kind of one time. You pair that with something like an Avidyne IFD 440 or any other options, and the Dynon Autopilot, which hopefully will be coming to the Moonies in the near future. And you have the opportunity to maybe install this package for less than 60,000, being right around 59 grand. So to recap, avionics are expensive, and it has me like questioning what in the world I should do. In the last video, I talked about whether or not I should sell the airplane or upgrade this airplane or, all those different options or conversations. I think we're pretty well settled that we should invest in our current platform. But I'll tell you this, 60 grand is not easy to come by, not in our books. So we have to be real smart about how we make these investments. So I'll ask one more time. If you have thoughts on how to save some costs, or thoughts on how to kind of stair step into this or what the right pieces and parts might be, please share it with the community. I'm sure I'm not the only one going through this. Drop it in the comments below. I will say one or two ideas that I had. Of course, I want to sell everything we take off of the airplane, which in today's world can be tough because there's a lot of scamming going on with avionics being high costs that they are. But things like our digital gauges that we have right now, the Electronics International gauges, and our tail beacon, that certainly has some value. Our working radios or other things that might come out have some value. But all totaled, it might only be $5,000. But one side effect of, again, making some of these changes is I could remove the vacuum system, which we view as a great improvement, and of course weight savings. There's so many positive things that can come out of it, but whether or not you can justify the total spend, that's a whole nother question. So for now, I'll leave it at that. I appreciate you watching, and we'll catch you as we begin to make some decisions and get the Mooney back up in the sky.